Okay, so this is day one of me sharing about my life and what it is that I do, what I think about, what I'm up to, all of those good things. So my name is Charlene Ridley. I am a mom first and foremost, was a mother of three. But my son Jaden, 16-year-old Jaden, passed away last June, so exactly 1 year ago this week. But I'm still a mom of three, right? Like, I'm still a mom of three because I will always be Jaden's mama. So yes, mother of three. I live in just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, and I am, I guess, a bunch of things, right? So I've decided that in my journeys, I know that I have so many things to give to the world and so many gifts and bits of information to give away, but I have tended to like to be behind the scenes and not really seen. So last night I was laying in my bed and I couldn't sleep, and I was watching something on YouTube, and it was an interview between an someone who I just started following, but I don't know his last name. Oops, sorry. But he went to UNLV, which is incredible because I moved here from Las Vegas, and my oldest daughter actually went to UNLV, and my goddaughter graduated from UNLV, and all of the things, right? So I was like, oh, UNLV in the house. I was excited about that. But anyway, he was interviewing a guy, Chris Do. And this is the second time I've heard about Chris Do recently. And so I stayed up and watched this podcast, and it was incredible. But one thing I was reminded during the podcast is that sometimes we just need to put ourselves out there, right? And I am constantly, if you know me, I am incredible in terms of the amount of content and information that I have and what I give to my friends, also to my clients. So how would I say this? Like, in the world, we have all these catchphrases, right? So I'm just going to say it simply. I'm interested in a lot of things. Like, I've never been a person that is laser focused on one particular thing. And maybe that's because of my background. My ex-husband was military, so we moved all over the country. So I got to have the opportunity of having a lot of different jobs. And so I got to experience a lot of different things. But I also have this personal belief that opportunities and experiences are like clothing, and you're meant to try them on and see what you love, and whatever you don't love, you get to put back on the rack and not purchase. So I have all of these skills and abilities, and one of the things that I do is I am a coach that helps people take the skills that they have right now and translate them into money-making activities. But I also do a bunch of other things. So like right now, I'm on my way to my creative studio, which I just opened in January of 2024. That's my latest passion project, and I love, love, love it. But I'll tell you about that as we get in. But I'm like, to sum it up in a sentence, because people like to do that, I am a multi-passionate serial entrepreneur. Yeah, that's what I am. But I just like to say that I like to do all the things. I do what brings me joy. I do what makes me feel excited. I do what lights me up. And part of that is part of me reparenting myself. I grew up in a household, I don't need to go back and pull it all out and drag it into this conversation or even into my daily life. But I realize now as an adult that 80% of all homes are dysfunctional. And so I grew up in less than an ideal household, and I wasn't really allowed to be a child. So a lot of what I do now in my adult life, in both how I make money and how I parent and how I live my life, revolves around me reparenting and bringing the magic of life into my life that I didn't have when I was a kid. So that's what I'll say about that. So I'm on my way into my creative studio. And I know that a lot of people, some people in the industry know what creative studios are, some people don't. But let's just talk about it, right? So one of my latest projects is I opened a content creation studio in Charlotte, North Carolina. And this particular studio, called the Unpause Your Dreams Creative Studio, is all about women. And so that wasn't initially the intention, right? Initially, this idea started off with, I wanted an event space, right? Because event spaces are great ways to sort of somewhat passively make income. And so I'd been looking around in the Charlotte market for 2 years, I think, just about 2 years. And things were like, even though there's all these gurus online, they're like, yeah, get an event space, do this, do that, and have all of these like low point entry points, or low cost entry points that they say, oh, it's only going to cost you, $1,500 to $2,000 a month. That wasn't my reality here in Charlotte. And so I contemplated, because I am a coach and I believe in coaching. Coaching has changed my life. I will forever have my own coach for whatever it is that I'm doing in life. But I thought about, okay, do I want to hire a business person that's specifically an expert in creating event spaces and see if they can help me navigate the market? And I decided against it. So what I was running into in the market is the cost of leasing commercial spaces was like $8,000 to $12,000 a month in the Charlotte market. And I was watching a lot of people jump into these incredible commercial leases, and they were failing. And they were having to close their door in less than like a year, some in less than 6 months. And it really made me, one, sad, because I love small business. And I think that I know that these are all people's dreams, right? And so you've heard the name of my studio, Unpause Your Dreams Creative Studio, but the Unpause Your Dreams is my brand. And it is so important to me because, again, going back to childhood, I wasn't allowed to dream. Like, that wasn't encouraged. And so as an adult, I realized that adults are not living their dreams. I think the Gallup poll did a poll in the United States last year, and 80% of us aren't living our dreams. And that's really sad. So when I see a small business close, I know that that's someone's dream, someone's idea, right? And it's closing. And I know that many of us do not have the resilience to come back and try it again. So it makes me really sad. So I was watching the market and I was looking around at all these spaces, and then the requirements for what they were asking was just like more than I wanted to do, right? In terms of like disclosures and finances and how much they wanted you to invest and all of these things. And again, I'm a single mom. So I really look for the opportunities that have the least amount of risk for me, but also put the least amount of cash out, right? So that I can get started. And yes, I know that there's business credit and there's all of those things, right? But ultimately, even if there's business credit, and I'm not saying that I don't utilize business credit, right? I'm just saying that I look for the opportunities that have the least amount of cash coming out of my pocket, either through credit or through what I'm spending, like liquid cash, right? I don't even know if that's the way that you would say it. But anyway, I don't want to spend a lot. So I was looking for these opportunities that were not going to cost me a lot to get started. And everything between $8,000 and $12,000 a month, plus the investment, plus the amount of taxes and CAMs and all of these things that were going to go into these properties, I decided like, okay, this isn't a thing for me, right? Like this isn't something that I'm willing to do right now. And so I kind of just tabled it and said, okay, not event planning, not an event space, not at this time. But in my life, I continue to go on doing the things that I need to do. And I'm always aware of my environment and like things that I could find, that I could think about that are missing, or things that are nice to have, or things that I experience because I'm an experienced person that sit really well with me as a person and in my spirit, right? So I am not a person that likes to create content. Remember, I said I like being behind the scenes. And so I went to this space, a content creation space that my daughter actually found last year sometime, right? And she and I booked the space for 2 hours. So we paid for an hour each. We got a photographer, we brought our clothes, and we did a ton of photos there, right? And it was really good for me because I was like, yes, I don't have to do photos anytime soon because I don't like taking pictures. So I loved it. I love the concept. And then it so happens that my daughter, who is an esthetician, and has a spa in like one of those salon suites kind of buildings, mixed use buildings though. This one is the one that she's in is a mixed use space. It is not just a salon suite. So they have salon suites, they have office space, they have warehouse space. It so happens that a few months later, she moved into a mixed use salon suite space. And as we were walking by to move her in, there was this 2,200 square foot space that was available. And at first I was like, I don't know. Not really sure what it is that I want to do with this space, but I started really thinking about it. And so I reached out, called the property manager. They said, please tell me you're not doing an event space, because the landlord doesn't want that. And we keep getting tons of calls about that. So I was like, that's incredible, right? Because 2 years ago, I would have been saying, yes, are you interested in having someone release this for event space? And so I told them that my idea was a content creation studio and also a professional development space, because everything that I do is around personal professional development. And I knew that if I was going to also have this space, that I would be able to give talks there and I would be able to do workshops and summits there. So they love the concept, and long story short, very quickly and with very little out of pocket, we moved forward in a lease agreement, and I was able to get the keys right before Thanksgiving. So that's really the story of how I got into the content creation space. And it really just evolved once I was said yes to making the phone call and finding out what it was going to be. I think I said in the beginning that I am a Christian, so I rely heavily on God for everything, right? So even over the past year and the death of my son, the way that I am still smiling, the way that I still have joy is because from the moment that my son passed, I remember thinking God is still good, right? And I believe whatever you believe is true. So because I believe God is still good, and I believe that to be true, then I'm finding evidence of that in the world. And so I lean very heavily on my faith. It is the foundation of what I do. So as I was going into this space, I'm like, okay, God, if you want me to have this space, then you're going to make a way. And I need you to tell me what it's going to be. So 2,200 square feet, I've created 12 individual furnished, customized sets in this space. And then there is space for workshops for up to 50 attendees. And then there's also a podcast room that has seats and microphones for 2 people to create podcasts. So during the journey of that, which is really incredible, and I'm on my way to the studio, so when I get there, I will actually come back to this video and show you the space so that you know what I'm talking about. But in the sake of making the most of my time, I'm going to talk to you about it on the 30-minute car ride to the studio. But it has 12 creative spaces. They're customized. It's exactly what I visioned. So one thing that I do, remember I said I'm Unpause Your Dreams. So here's my book, and this is a brainstorming journal. And so it's for you to jot things down or to draw them out. So this is actually me drawing the beginning of the Unpause Your Dreams creative studio and what it was to look like. So I knew what every wall would look like. I knew what I wanted done, but I also, remember, don't want to spend a lot of money, right? And sometimes, just keeping it real, sometimes you don't have a lot of money to spend, right? So I'm a single mom. Yes, I have an MBA. Yes, I've worked for some of the most remarkable companies in the world. Most recently, when I left corporate America, I worked for Deloitte. For those of you that don't know, Deloitte is the #1 consulting firm in the world, and I was part of their leadership team. So I've done really well for myself in terms of navigating corporate America and making money. But that still doesn't mean that I want to spend money, because I am a single mom. And one of the reasons that I wanted to make so much money in corporate America was so that my 3 children would never feel the sting of me being a single mom. That was my goal. So my goal has always been to live really frugally. Now, I'm not talking about people that are out there that love the latest and greatest and all these material things. I'm just saying that's not me, right? That is not me. I am talking to you while I drive my regular car. Well, it's an SUV, right? And I don't happen to be a person that buys name brand. I actually bought one time, I bought a pair of Valentino shoes. And anything that I do, though, I do with intention, because remember, as a coach and having done so much work in the transformational leadership areas and professional and personal development, everything that I do is with intention. And so one time, as I was on this wealth journey, I went to Neiman Marcus and I bought this pair of Valentino shoes. And I specifically bought those shoes because I wasn't interested in buying Fendi, Gucci, or Louis Vuitton or anything like that, because that is what I find most people that like labels, those are the things that they go out and buy. And I'm not one that follows the trend, but I also am not one that's fascinated by those things, right? I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. So I knew that I was going to make a large purchase, meaning it was going to cost me over $1,000 for the shoes or whatever. But I knew that it had to be something that I found to be cute and that was not on trend according to other people. So I went and I bought these Valentino shoes. But the reason that I bought the shoes is because as I was on my wealth journey, I wanted to be able to spend money in a way that I purchased something that felt good for me, that was what I considered expensive, right? And in a way that felt good and I didn't resist. And the reason that I did that is because as I'm coaching, as I'm doing all these things, as I'm investing in myself, as I'm growing these businesses and all of these things, I did not want to move in energy of scarcity, right? So I used to call it broke energy, right? Because like broke energy says I can't afford that. I don't call it broke energy anymore because it's really truly scarcity and your words matter. So if I say broke energy, then I'm putting that out into the universe, right? I'm putting that out into the atmosphere, and it also can be drawn back to me, but it also can subconsciously program me to think that broken, all of those things. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to make any connections with that. So I've called it what it is, scarcity. And so when I was deciding that I was going to be able to move in my millionaire energy or abundant energy, like whatever you want to call it, right? Then I needed to be able to make decisions and spend money on something that I liked, not because it was trend, or something that I liked without feeling resistance to it because of the price tag. So that was really important for me. And it was important because I wasn't going to go out and spend it on, like buy it on credit or do anything. Those were going to be my hard-earned dollars that I spent. And I knew that if I could do that and just take that action to do that, that was going to unlock some things for me in my life in terms of how I thought about money, how I approached spending money, and the energy that I moved in with money. So I did that, wore the shoes one time. Honestly, I call them valet shoes because if you might look cute, but if you don't valet, and I'm talking not Las Vegas valet, right? Because I moved here from Vegas, so most of my references will be Vegas, because Vegas valet is totally different. You might have to valet and walk through the whole casino. I'm talking real world valet, like pull up in front of the restaurant, valet, get out and go right inside and sit down. They're valet shoes. They looked cute, but you couldn't wear them long, right? So wore them once. That was it. Had them in my closet for a while. As a matter of fact, I just recently listed them on Poshmark because I'm like, I'm never going to wear these shoes again. But it served the purpose that I needed it to serve. So I know I went off on a tangent, but I'm getting back to why I'm saying this. So when I was going into the studio, I'm like, God, I don't have money for this. I don't like, if it's your will, then you lay it all out for me. So you guys have heard, maybe you've heard, maybe not. People say God's will, God's bill, right? So I'm like, if you want it, go ahead, God, make it happen. And so got approved, got the keys, did the design work. And honestly, some of the things that were in my design, like there was this particular arch wall, I was like, okay, I took a painting class. I am naturally creative in that way, even though for many years I told myself I wasn't. I am creative, and now I accept and own that instead of rejecting it. So I was like, okay, the arch wall, I'm actually just going to paint it and make it illusion, like make an illusion of it being an arch world. But shout out to my daughter Amelia, who's incredible and who can build anything, or at least believe she can, and said, no mom, we're just going to build an arch wall. And then shout out to the women in my community, because even before I knew that this space was going to be just for women, it is no coincidence that I apparently know all of these DIY chicks who were like, oh my gosh, I have giant saws and table saws and hard hats and wagons full of tools and nail guns and all this stuff, and I can bring them to you and loan them to you so that you can go ahead and design the studio. And then there were people that actually came in and volunteered their time to work with us. Shout out to Brittany, who absolutely came in and donated quite a bit of her time to help us get some of the work done in the studio. And so instead of hiring a general contractor or someone, we did all of the work ourselves. Me, my daughter, my youngest daughter, Ava Grace, she frosted the windows, like and she came for moral support because she's not a DIY girl, but she wanted to be a part of it. And different people, we just got it done, and it took us about 5 weeks of build out to transform the space, to paint, to hang things, to put in wainscoting, to build a wall, to create a custom wall that looks sort of like concrete or gives a very urban feel to it. And we got it done. And in 5 weeks, we were able to have a soft grand opening and to open the doors. So that was January. It is now June, not July. June, I think, 12th. June 12th. And so we've been open for 6 months. So it's been an incredible journey. I'm going to show you guys the studio when I get in. And then after that, I'll do another video on what does it take to open a content studio. And actually, you know what? I'll tell you about it now. I know this is a rather long video, but if you're interested, you'll watch it, right? So yeah, and just getting through that, right? So the first thing I did was I found the space, right? I have this thought that no means find another way, and sometimes we just release things to come back to them later. So I was able to find a space. The second thing that I did was I believed, right? I activated my belief system. My belief system happens to be in God, but before you do anything or take on any project, right, you really need to step into the belief that you can make it happen. I even heard Chris Doe say that last night on this podcast that I told you that I was watching. He said, you know, one of the things that was really seriously one of the ways that he became successful is he had this incredible and insane belief in himself. And I think it's so important that we talk about that, because you need to believe that it's possible. Because if you're going to get started and you're going to go into it half-stepping, like, right, like, oh, I've got this idea and I'm going to do it and I hope it works out. A hope is just as good as like aligning with this is probably going to fail, right? Like, you have to go into it knowing that it's going to work out. Like, here's what I'm doing. I believe that it's for me. I believe that it's going to work out, and I'm going for it, right? Like, as they said before, like, I think it was Napoleon that said, burn the ships, right? Burn the ships. You can't go back. If you have no way to get back, then there's no choice but for it to win, or for you to learn a whole lot during the process, right? Which is also winning. So I got I signed the deal, believed that it was going to happen, and then I activated my community, right? Because I knew what my budget was for opening this space. I knew what I was capable of, right? And I knew, and I even had a line of credit that was available to me, right? But I knew that I did not want to access that. And if I did, it was going to be actually it wasn't a line of credit, it was a business credit card. But I didn't want to really have to dive into that and take that, because that's all money that I got to pay back, right? So like, yeah, I leverage credit, but not to the extent that I'm going to max the credit out and then have to sit around and worry about like how fast I'm going to be able to pay this thing back. I'm not doing that. That's just my own personal preference. And so I activated the community to, one, help provide the resources for the build out, and two, for those that had time and were willing to donate time to get their help in doing the build out, right? And then I got to work. Like, I put myself on a time schedule. I knew, yes, if I had a general contractor, or even if I had more time, I might have taken a longer time to build this thing out. But remember, I'm a single mom. And I keep saying that because it is not a label that I need to wear, but I'm going to tell you that most of the time, things that are part of your identity will impact how you make decisions, right? And so as a single mom, I don't have 6 months to be waiting for something to open, right? Like, I just don't have that. And so I knew that what our timeline was. I knew that it was really aggressive and what we needed to do to get it done. And we got it done. So with that, we opened January 4th. So I think that's like the 4 things that it takes to open a content studio. And I think that in that, there's a lot of ways that you can accomplish the things that I've said. I've given you examples of how I have done it. When we get to the studio, I'll show you the studio, what it looks like, and then I'll talk to you about mixed uses and how you can even rent the space out to do things other than just photography, videography, webinars, all of that kind of stuff. That probably won't be in this video because I'm just going to try to keep this video around like 40 minutes. So if it's not in this one, then I'll come back definitely another day and I'll talk to you about that. But this is my day one of sharing my life with you, sharing what I do, what I'm up to, how I am the woman that I am, how I'm the mom that I am, and all that good stuff. So I hope that you've enjoyed this. If you have any questions for me, definitely drop the questions in the comment section and I will do my best to come back and answer them. But if I also see a common theme of something, then I'll probably create a video response on that as well. So yeah. All right, I'll see you again in a minute at the studio. Okay, so here we are going into the studio. Unpause Your Dreams Creative Studio. And here we are. So you walk in. The space is so much larger than you actually think that it is online, right? But I told you it's 2,200 square feet, right? So let's go set by set. So this is the first set when you walk in. So I guess when I was coming up with this in my mind, I was thinking that it would look like a foyer or an entryway, right? But it's also a scene for you to be able to take a picture in front of. Now keep in mind, this table is here because we just had an event and this was their check-in table. I'm actually gonna take it down today. So that's the first set. You come in, there is like a foyer, I like to think of it as. And then this is actually, we built this, right? I told you guys in the video on my way over here, I was going to paint it onto the wall. But this is actually a wall that we constructed in this studio, and it actually has a seat. It can be styled. We've seen people in photo shoots style it in a sort of Moroccan or Middle Eastern look, right? But it can be styled and you can actually sit on the bench, you can stand on it, you can put multiple people on it, you can do whatever you want with it. Then I mentioned to you guys in my video that there was actually a space that I hand painted this. So I was going for a very urban look, right? Because we're shooting inside, but sometimes you'd like to have that look that looks like you're somewhere else. And so this wall I actually did, it's 3 layers. I will tell you that it is a combination of joint compound, paint, and concrete coloring. So that's something that we created and wanted to make sure that we had a corner there, right? So that if you needed to have a visual in a corner, that you could also have that. So moving on, we'll go into the podcast room in a minute, but right here is your standard fireplace scene, right? And so it looks like someone's moved that little thing there over. So your standard fireplace scene, and then we did a built-in bookshelf. So remember, I like to have everyone unpause their dreams. So of course it's a dream There's our branded mug on the shelf as well. But then just to add a little bit of detail to it, every book on the shelf is actually by a woman author, and wanted that to be something that actually stood out. And keep in mind, in this space, in this creative space, anything can be moved. So any of those things that are on the bookshelf are actually considered props. This actual bench right here can be moved to another part of the studio to make sure that you can get the intended look that you have. So just panning around the studio from the area that I am in, and we'll continue on to the back. So here we are. This is another set or scene. And one of the really cool things is this table was made by one of our good friends. Shout out to Dr. Brielle McKenzie, who is like all things DIY and furniture making, and she made that table for us. So this scene, you can actually close the velvet curtains. We did all of the wainscoting, all of that, but you can close the curtains to make this an even different scene. You can remove the centerpiece and make it really whatever you want to make it, right? And then we go over here and it's like a living room scene. And this is super popular for people that like that white, very crisp, very classic scene and how that looks. It's really interesting though, when you see photographers shooting here, how it comes out different according to each photographer's style, which I think is really cool. Oh, let me come over here also so that you'll see this. We have a mini dressing room with a bench and a clothes rack and some of the little things that you might need during a photo shoot so that you can literally come in here and create it all. And we literally created all of that with pipes from Lowe's, and we just like made our own makeshift space, which this is also my makeshift closet space. So going over here, this is the desk area, and okay, all that's my stuff today. That is where I am working, but this is an opportunity for you to have a desk scene, to sit on the desk, to sit behind the desk, to stand in front of the desk, to do whatever you want to create that scene. I told you guys we had an event, so here's some of the chairs that need to still be put away from that event. And then we have our standard photography wall, right, for photographers that are hoping to have a standard backdrop. So of course in this you could have gray, you could have white, you could also have black. And we've had some incredible headshot shoots on that and some other incredible photography come out of that. And then here is the mirror and also bench with a window looking out and a second door coming into the studio. And then this is another section where you can take photos here, but is also what I call the front of the house. So if anyone is here speaking, when we have had events with speakers in the room, they are positioned there. Bring in a television. I thought about having a projection screen here, but honestly, I didn't want to mess up the aesthetics of the wall, right? And having that, so we bring in a TV screen, or I've seen other people, if they don't want a huge TV screen, they bring in their own. And then all of this area, right, that you see here, all of this area that I'm standing in is filled with chairs, and it can also be filled with tables so that you have an audience of up to 50. Just so you know, we also have lined this room with vendors, so that if there's an event that people would like to have vendors at, they can also do that. So let's travel into the podcast room. Right now, a lot of our studio lighting is in there because we had an event, and yeah, and I haven't brought it all back. So in our studio room, in our podcast room, there are 2 mics, 2 chairs, soundproof curtains, also some sound insulation behind those curtains. And then we have lighting, right? Like, so this lantern typically is in this room, but then we also have some smaller lighting that goes either in the studio or stays in this room during the creation of podcasts. So this is the studio room. And this is all the Unpause Your Dreams Creative Studio. So if you have questions for me on how I built this, how it was designed, how it was made, I'm happy to share that with you, but go ahead and drop them in the comments. All right.